With a world as vast as Westeros and characters as strong as Tyrion, Arya, and Cersei, among many others, Game of Thrones is packed, filled, stuffed with iconic moments and some of the best storytelling and filmmaking TV has to offer. And while I treasure episodes such as Baelor, The Reigns of Castamere, The Laws of Gods and Men, Battle of the Bastards, and The Winds of Winter for being amongst the greatest feats in television history, there's another, much less mentioned and respected episode that I always think about, maybe even more than some of its more iconic ones, not because it's some massive spectacle, no, but because it's so weird, so at odds with what Game of Thrones is. The episode in question is A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, the second episode of the show's 8th and final season, named after this moment, which we will cover later, as well as a series of novellas by George R.R. Martin, also known as Tales of Dunk and Egg. The episode, set entirely in Winterfell, follows our central characters, Jon, Daenerys, Jaime, Tyrion, et al., as they essentially prepare to die before the long-awaited Battle of Ice and Fire between the Alliance of the Living Armies and the Army of the Dead. And maybe that doesn't sound like the weirdest Game of Thrones episode ever. I mean, in terms of what goes on during the episode from a plot standpoint, there are plenty of much weirder things that have happened throughout the show than in this episode. Podrick being an absolute sex god, the Red Woman turning into the old lady from The Shining, Ed Sheeran having a little bit more than a cameo the season prior. So let me clarify what I mean by weird, strange, crazy, whatever I chose for the title of this video. A Night of the Seven Kingdoms is the strangest Game of Thrones episode because it doesn't act like a Game of Thrones episode. In fact, it refuses to.
Where are you going?
I'm not spending my final hours with you two miserable old shits.
For one, it's a bottle episode.
It's a bottle episode.
Not literally, but the closest Thrones ever got. For those unfamiliar with the term, a bottle episode is a TV episode commonly set in a confined space with minimal characters, sets, and effects. Like this one.
Who's Cartwright?
I'm Cartwright.
You're not Cartwright.
Of course I'm not Cartwright!
This one. And of course this one.
Bitch!
Okay, guys, hey, guys, stop! You're being completely illogical. We need to flip the table, divide the group by gender, and then search each other in our underwear.
Bottle episodes are typically performed as a cost-saving measure when production teams have exceeded their budgets on previous episodes or need to save money for future ones. Taking place at Winterfell with no action and limited sets, and produced with what I would have to gather is a much cheaper price tag, relatively speaking, the episode is undeniably smaller, even if it doesn't exactly meet the definition of a bottle episode. Being the episode before the long night and the final battles for Westeros, the placement of a bottle episode makes a lot of sense here, but it's very odd for the show, being something that Thrones simply never does. Game of Thrones prides itself in its expansive world building and having to follow 100 characters around that world, but all these characters are pretty much here. And even episodes like Blackwater or Battle of the Bastards, which anchor themselves to major events in one core location, feature massive sets and loads of visual effects. A Night of the Seven Kingdoms is people talking.
You're not angry at me.
I'm not angry at anyone.
Why didn't you tell them?
You won't be able to help us in this fight if I let them murder you first.
As the best bottle episodes do, the format allows Thrones to really focus on character development, along with its chief goal of building up even more hype for the Battle of Ice and Fire. With no major plot, and being very much a breather episode, lighter and calmer in tone, the characters get to be characters, often more alive and definitely more introspective than they are usually presented. Being the darkest hour of the show, we really get to see how the characters handle dread, how they feel and act knowing that this may be their last night ever. Brienne stays very much in the present, focusing on training for the battle at hand. Jon, Sam, and Ed reminisce about the past, and Grey Worm and Missandei look to the future. It's a very smart decision to do a stripped-down, character-focused bottle episode, given the fact that we're predicting that many of these characters who we've been with for up to 8 seasons will likely die in the next episode, which makes these dialogue-heavy, this may be the last time we see each other moments, feel all the more special. Lamely, in the long night, the next episode, that does not end up being the case. Literally no one important in this episode dies. But looking at this episode removed of that context, has there ever been a more effective and satisfying implementation of the breather episode? Especially within the context of the 8th season, whose back half felt so unbearably rushed and half-assed. How great is it that this episode wasn't scrapped and turned into some lame getting ready to fight montage scene of all the characters arriving at Winterfell, hugging, training, and swiftly getting thrown into battle. That being said, despite taking its time and prioritizing character building scenes over plot building ones, the episode is certainly not going to bore you to sleep and features quite a few massively important moments. Through Bran, we get to finally understand the Night King's motivations, essentially to kill Bran, the Three-Eyed Raven, to remove all traces of humanity from the world. We have a meeting between Sansa and Daenerys, which opens up the question of what would happen to the North if the now allies were to win the war against the Night King and overthrow Cersei. We also get the final scene of the episode where Jon reveals to Daenerys his true identity as Aegon Targaryen.
When I was a child, my brother would tell me a bedtime story about the man who murdered our father.
I really like the opening of the episode, which places a powerless Jaime Lannister on trial before a council of just about every one of his enemies. Despite a particularly pissed Daenerys and a wisely skeptical Sansa, Brienne vouches for him, recalling the time that Jaime saved her from being raped, which ended up costing him his sword-wielding hand, labeling him a man of honor. And this is another reason why this episode feels so weird, so off-brand for Thrones. It's, dare I say, warm? Bran forgiving Jaime, Theon reuniting with Sansa, Jon broing out with the Northern homies. There's an overwhelming amount of tenderness and feel-good moments. And there's no greater example of this in the episode or damn near the entire show than the final scenes at the fireplace with Tyrion, Jaime, Brienne, Podrick, Davos, and Tormund. It's a pretty bizarre conglomeration of characters, especially the inclusion of Tormund, whose giant's milk story followed by insanely aggressive chugging seems like a joke idea that the showrunners just let slip into the final cut for no other reason other than to be different.
Maybe I will have that drink.
Despite being an odd hangout sesh group on the surface, Tyrion points out that each of these characters at some point had fought against the Starks and are now fighting alongside each other to defend their castle. He also brings up the different battles the group has survived, using them as a way to argue why the group might live. This recognition is a great reflective summary of the show, which feels somehow both epic and personal, which is what Game of Thrones is at its best. The scene eventually leads to a conversation revolving around women being unable to be knighted. Brienne asserts that it's against tradition, to which Tormund counters with a fuck that. Jaime then chimes in, arguing that any knight can knight another knight, and offers to do so for Brienne. Along with being just so damn heartwarming, the knighting feels almost too fitting for these two characters, each having earned their right for this moment. Brienne gets to be the knight she always dreamt to be, and always acted as, and Jaime gets his triumphant redemption moment, as it shows that he can truly care about someone as a friend. The other characters watching and clapping in respect also really builds up this emotional moment, each character being among the most respectable in the show, each in different ways, people that you really just can't not root for. And I know Game of Thrones is awesome because of the world building, the battles, the dragons, Ned getting his head chopped off and Oberyn getting his head crushed, but I would gladly accept and be thankful for just 30 more minutes of this, seeing these characters contemplate their own mortality, glug on some wine, and shoot the shit. And I think it's when you have that you know that your show is truly great. The performances in the scene and others throughout the episode all feel like the actors are at their best, or trying to be. You really get the sense that much of the cast had to have been emotional sharing these final moments together on camera and using these very genuine emotions as fuel for their characters, who are also similarly embracing an uncertain future and perhaps more accurately, an imminent demise. So wait, do I actually love this episode? I guess I never said that I didn't. I like Strange, and Strange makes good TV. It's why every discussion of any acclaimed show ever features the same overused descriptor, subversive. And I'm guilty of that as well, don't get me wrong. I think I'm well within the majority and my rights as a TV consumer when it comes to my hate for the rest of the final season. I had thought the show was already going downhill with the season 7 episode Beyond the Wall, the one where they go beyond the wall, but season 8 is everything that critics and fans have expressed that it is. It's rushed, it's lazy, it's so poorly done that I didn't even want to watch the final 2 episodes at all because I feared that it would completely ruin the show for me and I didn't want to remember it at its lowest. But Season 8, Episode 2, A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, given the least amount of plot or big moments amongst all the episodes in the final season, illustrates, depressingly, that Season 8 really could have been great if it simply slowed down a little, stayed true to its characters and their journeys, and let everyone just have a little bit of fun.
Would you like a drink? Brought my own.
This is Come Watch TV. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.